Good evening, ladies and gents. My name is Donna Curtis. I'm the Vice Chair of the Carson City Parks and Recreation Commission, and I'm not sure where our chair is, but until she does or does not arrive, I'll be happy to start the meeting. So I want to welcome you to the April 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Carson City Parks and Recreation Commission. And if we could start with the roll call, please.
Chairperson Keever. Vice Chair Curtis.
Here.
Commissioner Cassiopo.
Here.
Commissioner Bagwell. Here. Commissioner Long.
Here.
Commissioner Glenn. Commissioner Lehman. The quorum's present.
Jen, has anybody let you know if they're not going to be making the meeting?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll get some more folks later. Okay, this is the time where we can have public comment from anyone who wants to address the commission on anything that is not on our agenda tonight.
Thanks.
And I believe our pond person is coming up.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. C.K. Bailey, Carson City for the record. Okay. Bailey Fishing Pond was reopened Friday, March 9th. Was given a clean bill of health according to wet lab testing and green water laboratory, which was received by Parks and Rec on March 7th. Pond was closed on January 30th, Tuesday, and reopened Friday, March 9th. Total of 38 days of what I call lost opportunity time for angling and for anglers, for the public. I do not blame Parks and Recreation. And I do for the closing of the pond, as they had to do it. The orange substance and oily slick that accompanies it, that was the item of focus by this complaint. Had been at the pond site since the original hole was filled with water a year before Nevada Department of Wildlife, NDOW, stocked it the first time in Bailey's. Which means to me that if NDOW and the engineers who were contracted to build the pond saw a reason not to build the pond, then at the first scoop of soil, the project would have ceased at that time and not have continued before one fish was wasted or anybody's time was wasted, period. The NDOW biologist, or should I say an NDOW biologist who I will not name, stated to me that the iron fungus, or fungi, that is far from being an unusual occurrence in the Sierra. On Sunday, March 11, I witnessed a steady stream of anglers, counting 18 people of varying ages of fishing. In closing, I'd like to, those I know from personal witness there at the pond have not had, there's not been a fish kill, thank God, and hopefully not ever, or there has not been, except maybe by a careless angler, but by all accounts, any of those who fish on a regular basis at Bailey's has not ever gotten ill from eating any of the fish either at Bailey's. So I wish to thank Parks and Rec, Jennifer Budge, David Navarro, Alan Biddle. I want to thank Dan Castens and John Doran. Did I get his name right? I keep saying Duran, it's Doran. Great team, by the way, and I want to thank you all very much. Over and above what has happened in this last episode. This was not an inexpensive episode, and a public thank you should be happily and graciously given by the one who felt that they were doing a community service. The thanks should go not only to Parks and Rec, but to each angler who spends a considerable amount of money for a license, for the privilege of angling. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Any questions from any commissioners or? I would just like to comment that I'm very sorry that, this happened. Apparently was not exactly a necessary thing to do, but when you get a complaint like that, what else are you going to do? And hopefully things will go smoothly from now on.
It's a funny pond. All kinds of things are going to happen there and still do, and will for as long as it's in existence. So I hate to say it, but you have to kind of get used to some things. The team, and I'm just going to say one more thing. The team that you've put together, Dan, with Dan and Mr. Doran, I think are tremendous, and yourselves, by the way, because you get personally involved in it as well, professionally. What you do for Bailey's and for the people of this city, it's truly an amazing thing. It doesn't just happen by itself. So I want to thank publicly those individuals.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience want to address the commission on an item that's not on the agenda tonight? If not, thank you very much. We'll continue on. Any modifications or changes to the agenda from anyone? Hearing or seeing none, we'll move on to,
Madam Chair, did you approve the minutes?
oh, sorry, go ahead. Minutes, I'm sorry. What am I doing here? Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. It didn't have a lot of verbiage with it, so I missed it. Anyway, yes, we have the minutes from the last meeting, which was February 6th. Any comments, questions, motions?
My only comment is I looked over them, they look fine, but I wasn't here, so I'm going to have to abstain.
He beat me to the punch. They look fine to me too, but I also was not at the meeting.
Well, yeah, I do have something I wanted to add to the minutes, and I haven't gotten my notes in front of me yet, but, so I'll try to do this best I can, because I wasn't where I was going to be leaving the meeting. But anyway, on the minutes, on page 4, under the item E, which was the, talking about the capital improvements. About 3/4 down that paragraph at the top of page 4, it said the commissioners agreed with Ms. Budge's suggestions, and the suggestions are listed in the minutes. But I believe I said, and I may be wrong, I guess Laura, you'd be the only one that, or Jen, or somebody could maybe, but I thought what I had said at the time was that in addition, I would like to see one of the playgrounds funded, the playground repairs, on the capital improvement list, which happened to be the Mills Park one for $300,000. And I thought that the commission agreed with that.
One playground per year is what
Yes.
we were, right.
Yes. And so starting with the priority,
Remember that,
I believe
right?
it was Mills Park.
Yeah.
So anyway, I believe that's what I suggested in the minutes, and if they could be corrected, if that is correct, I understand you had some technical problems, so haven't had a chance to really research it yet, but if it's true, if we could have that corrected, I would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? If not, I guess I'll entertain a motion.
So
Well, would we then just push the motion to the next meeting?
Well-
Because we wouldn't have a quorum?
the quorum's reduced.
So
because-
it's reduced, the
So
quorum's
we're-
reduced, so they just have to be unanimous.
Right.
Got it.
We'll be unanimous. Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the February 6, 2018 minutes with the correction for 3E, adding the discussion on the annual playground. You have to second it.
And I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved as corrected. Thank you. Okay, now we can go to meeting items. And the first meeting item, 3A, is Program of the Month. And what we're going to be doing this month is talking about the asset management activities of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. And we have Dan Castens and Nick Wentworth, I believe, that are going to be presenting this. Unless, Jennifer, do you want to start it?
Or Dave Navarro.
Yes, Vice Chair, like Curtis, it's actually, I'll be doing it tonight. It's Dave Navarro. That was kind of a misprint on there, Dan Castens and Nick Wentworth, so, yes. Okay. I got it, okay. Will do. Thank you very much. Greetings, all commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and to talk about the Parks Department asset management plans. This is a presentation of, like I said, the asset management plan. To date, we've probably completed about 75% of the asset management plan itself. It's a work in progress, but we wanted to give you kind of like an overview of where we're at and what we're doing with this plan. So it's we still have to do like what is called a condition survey on it, but we're off to a good start. And as you'll see throughout the presentation, we've been coming up with some very good information that's going to help us moving forward in the Parks Department. Okay, so what is the asset management plan? Asset management plan is called Smart Sheet. It's currently the Public Works Facility Maintenance Department has been using this for probably a little over a year now, and it helped them to go through all of the public buildings and the parking lots and kind of rate them and also have a condition index. And what we did is we took what they started and we manipulated it to fit our operations and what we're doing currently at the Parks Department. It is an Excel type spreadsheet, so we can add in some quantities, we can add it up, and it's easy to maneuver through. It also allows us to capture the assets at all the facilities, not only the condition of the amenities, but also the qualities of them as well. And the program has served to be user-friendly. The asset management program will implement strategies with the fundamental goal of providing the following benefits: developing a proactive maintenance and planning strategy, minimizing risks and maximizing the effective, useful life of city assets, optimizing for its customer service, promoting data-driven decisions. That's like 3 Ds. That's pretty tricky. And increasing transparency. So this is what the asset management cycle looks like. As you can see, it starts right around the asset inventory, and it goes to condition asset, capital improvement, let's see, planning, and so on. According to this cycle, we are at the condition of asset stage the condition asset like stage. We've done an asset inventory in all of our parks and all of our facilities, and we have also been working with the facility maintenance department on the process of this program, and they have been a tremendous help just during this time. So what are the objectives for the 2008 objective for us is the quarterly review of condition assessments. We are currently starting this quarter assessing the condition of all of our parks Department and city NC City assets. When completed, it will look like this picture here of the assets, and it will have on there useful life. It will also have a condition ranking, an action, and also capital needs. I know it's a little bit hard to see on the screen here, but all those will have a value. And when we're done doing that to all of our parks, we will have a better idea of our needs and where all of our assets and amenities stand. Currently we are at, I want to say we're at 92 like sheets on this. So we do have a lot of areas out there that we have broken down, and it's pretty. It was a pretty laborious process, but in the end, I think it's going to be very beneficial for us. What of our objective here is also to have a work order management system in place, and this is called Request Tracker. Request Tracker is a work order based system that the Parks Department has implemented and will be going live very soon. The graph that you see above can be displayed on our website and updated constantly to have a real-time outlook on what is being done by the maintenance staff. The maintenance coordinators will share a brunt of the input, but soon the parks maintenance workers will also be able to input this information as well. The request tracker will also help us track the maintenance side of the asset management program by providing the frequency, the man hours, and the cost associated to each one of our assets. Again, Public Works Facility Maintenance has had this in place now for I want to say almost 2 years, and with this there's a lot of valuable information that we can pull up about our parks, our amenities, our sites, how many times we're visiting, how often are things being replaced, and we can also add in information such as if we have to purchase playground equipment, we can add in the invoice amount, when it was done, and all that we can pull up and we can pull out into a graph, so we can see where we're spending a lot of our time, where we're spending our funds, and see if we need to make changes in those areas and see repurpose things. We will have a dedicated phone number when this goes into effect, that anybody can call in and they can report safety concerns or issues, or see problems, and then we can turn those into work orders. And when we turn them into work orders, then our staff can see those instantaneously and they can pull those up then. We will also have the capability to respond to individuals through this via email when projects have been started and also when they've been completed. Let's see as well. This will not take place of Carson Connect. We will still have that feature. This is just an addition, and it does a little bit more for us, the Parks Department, and that we can track a lot more things than we can in Carson Connect right now. But we will still use Carson Connect to respond to all the inquiries that still come in. And then with the request tracker as well, we also have the capability of not only inputting invoices, but also pictures of current conditions, and also once things change, we can take pictures and put that in as well. And we can, and like I said, invoices and also receipts can be inputted as well. So here are some of the things that the asset management program has been able to capture for us in our spreadsheets. We've been able to capture some of the, let's see, some of the structures that we have. Let's see, restroom facilities, announcers buildings, snack bars, pavilions, let's see, bleachers, just to name a few. And then some of the like amenities would be our playgrounds, exercise equipment, picnic tables, and also park benches. And then of course our like fencing and our signs as well. We do have a array of signs out there, and I'll get to a slide a little bit later, and you can see how many signs we actually have out there. It'll also help us with our parking lots, irrigation system, and also our landscapes as well. So what have we found out like so far? Here's some interesting numbers that have been discovered since we started collecting the data for the spreadsheets. So the total number of trees in all of our facilities. Now, this does not include open space. This just includes all of the parks facilities and all the public buildings as well. So we currently have about 5,601 trees. We maintain a total turf area of 120 acres. Total landscape areas is 69 acres, and these would be the medians that you would find like downtown or on 395, or some of the medians that are along College Parkway. Total number of shrubs in all those mediums, 9,611, and the total length of trails, and this is rounded like a little bit, but not 90,000 linear feet of trails, and that's asphalt, DG path, and also concrete as well. So what does this break down per parks maintenance staff? I thought I would throw this in here. So based on our 12 full-time employees, which is 4 coordinators and 8, and currently 8 park maintenance workers, this would break down as 466 trees per park maintenance staff, 10 acres of turf, 6 acres of non-turf landscape areas, and this would be 1.4 miles of trail per staff member if we were to break it down that way. Now, if you throw in special events, setups, snow removal, sporting tournaments, carnivals, and like fairs, it's just another way for us to tell our story and to provide like data. So when we do talk to people and they come into us and ask us, well, how much of an area do you guys maintain? Then we have this information, and what this also might help us to determine as well is where we would like to spend our core maintenance and where we need to make some changes possibly. Here's some interesting stats. I thought these were kind of interesting, so that's why I threw them in there. Signs, everywhere signs, 1,598 signs in our facilities. I think there was one park in there that had 72 signs, and I was like, wow, that's, do we really need that many signs in there? So I think the only sign that wasn't in there that said, that like the no fun sign was not in there, so, it's with information like this that it can also help us with grants to letting them know the size, the areas, the amount of amenities and everything that we are maintaining. And then it would also help us determine, what gets moved up to a higher priority and what gets moved to like a lower priority when we start looking into this. With this, it's also, we have recently established a master signage plan, and so we're hoping that, we can eliminate a lot of those signs, and so we're not having redundancy, or we're not having the multiple signs that say the same thing. So what's the next step for the Parks Department? So the next step for us is to create the condition index, and that's a rating scale that we have that's built in to the smart sheet, and it's from 1 to 5. One being at the lower end, and 5 being at the top end. Usually a 5 would be like a safety concern, that it needs to be replaced, needs to be fixed, because it's a safety issue. And then we will also want to start integrating our current inventory tracker for equipment, and we want to start to integrate that with a smart sheet. Currently, all smart sheet is set up for us to do right now is all our amenities and parks. We do have another system that we are using for our equipment only, and that's called the WASP inventory system, and it's also an Excel spreadsheet based, and our parks shop coordinator just finished updating all the information in that. So we're looking at integrating Smartsheet and also like the WASP inventory system, so everything is on one page, one program, and then also to use the request tracker in conjunction with the smart sheet as well. I think by having the information of how much time we are spending out there, how much resource we are using, plus the condition, the age, how often our stuff is being used, will give us a better idea of how to categorize our asset management plan moving forward. So with that, are there any questions of the asset management program at this time?
Commissioners? Commissioner Bagwell?
I'll just ask one. The request tracker system that you're talking about versus Carson City Connect. So I think I heard you say that you were interested in adding a phone line so that people could call in. Does that mean you'll enter that information in Carson City Connect and the tracker system to generate work orders? Or I'm just concerned about dual entry, because the objective of Carson City Connect was for us to track citywide all of the activities. And then is the request tracker the system that IT uses? So there's no additional cost center. It's just taking a work order system that we currently have and putting that out. But I'm interested in, again, are we going to keep the information in Carson City Connect, and you would just enter it yourself?
Yes, that's a good question. I haven't looked at integrating. When I said we're going to have like a phone number, I have been working with the IT department, and yes, it's the same thing that the IT department is using. So there's no cost, and which was great. And at first, I didn't know if that would be the best thing for us, but after working with the IT department, we found out that the request tracker can be manipulated to fit our department and our needs. And so when we start getting into it, it was also brought to my attention that they can create a phone number. It won't create a work order automatically. That will still have to be done, but at least it'll give somebody an opportunity to call in, and we won't have to call in and have our administrative assistant answer it, then trying to track down who she should send it off to. It'll just be in there, and then it's going to be monitored by myself and probably our operations manager, Dan Castens, as well, and then we will create the work order from there. And the same will go from Carson Connect. I've already done that like a few times. I've gotten in a couple of Carson connects and some work had to be done. And so I created a work order and I turned it over to our guys, and our guys picked it up and fixed it. When they did, then I responded to the individual on the Carson Connect saying, yes, the work has been completed. We did it on this day. So.
I think what I'm interested in is if we lose the data because it doesn't get into Carson City Connect, then I lose the ability to see how many were complaint-driven or activity. And so I don't mind I think that tracker system is wonderful to generate and track things, but I really believe that if we bypass it to a help desk ticket, which is the essence what you're saying, is I call in and say, my computer isn't, I did that today as a matter of fact, my computer isn't working and I can't connect to the email system or whatever, so that's great, but it doesn't give you all the data to reside in one place, which was our objective with Carson City Connect. And so I thought all the departments were entering them there, and then it might say generated work order. I peruse them every so often to see. So not telling you what to do, just suggesting that you take a look to make sure we're not going to skew your numbers for the Parks Department as to how many people call in about issues in the parks. So just a thought.
Yeah, sure. No, and that's something that we have thought about, and we have. I know there's been a few occasions where we have created work orders where people have emailed us like directly and have put them in the Carson Connect. But we are going to have to create that habit like with it, but I don't see us. I still see us using Carson Connect, and I actually like it. The interaction that it has. Back to the public. I think right now most of our requests that we get are interdepartment or another city department, so it's easy for us just to keep it all in the request tracker. But if we get something from the outside, most definitely we'll make a conscious effort to put that back in. Let's see, Carson Connect, and that's easy to do. We can easily put that back in.
So how long do you think it's going to take you to actually get your condition indexes throughout the system? Because that's really where I can see that it will help the city set reserves. So one of the things we did that the rest of this commission may not be aware is we set 5 cents of the property tax to the asset management program, so 600,000 or 700,000-ish a year now. And we're going to start utilizing the data from the asset management program to help us rank across. Sad to say it has to be across the entire system, but I'm interested in how long you think it's going to take parks to get their condition indexes in there.
So the first part, which is probably the most laborious, we started it in probably November, I think, is when we had a good opportunity to get into there, and we just probably finished up that data in February, so probably took us like 4 months to do that. With the season coming up, I anticipate like 4 to 6 months to actually go back out and do like assessments now and go through and do that. So yeah.
For next year's, because I'm just trying to get a really good gauge as to when the city can expect to see the asset management in its entirety, because granted, we're taking baby steps to get there, but you're anticipating it within the year, so that maybe for next year's planning, we can at least utilize even within parks to rank which playground we're going to do or which, great.
Yes, that's correct. The overall plan to finish this completely would be like before the next fiscal year. So.
They just have to take a little bit of a timeout because it is our busy season. So we won't be able to pick this up again until the fall. And then it'd probably be, a few more months to make sure it's all finalized. But I did want to thank all the staff, the maintenance coordinators, Dan Castens. They've done the majority of this work, and it's, like 92, 95 sheets that he says to go through every park and look at every single element is really time consuming, but it'll be helpful later on, really, with that budget planning.
Okay. I'd just like to comment that, first of all, I kind of misunderstood what this agenda item was. I think it's because the public works data was thrown in there, and I guess a similar question to Commissioner Bagwell's was, I kind of envisioned that what this asset management plan or conditions index, part of it would be something, and I've been kind of touting this around the community, that you would be able to wave sheets of paper at people and say, look, here's 153 items prioritized, and this is what we need doing now. Is that kind of close to what we're hoping to get out of all this?
Yes, that's the end goal, is that we're trying to catch up, with lack of a better term, with what Public Works already did, so we have all that information. So yes, so we can say, like, here you go, here's the facts, here's the data. So yeah.
So Chairman Curtis, up until now, we've really only had our really vague 5-year CIP plan, which is just a snapshot of all of our needs. And we provided that to like the Parks Foundation and a lot of citizens that have inquired about, what are your biggest needs? How much does it cost? And that's really been the only thing we've been able to provide. But this will be the next step of that. So it'll drill down deeper into what our priorities are. So it'll be pages and pages, unfortunately. But if we had people that came forward and said, hey, I could maybe help out with $10,000 or $12,000, what items do you have that are in that range? We could go through all our parks and say, hey, these are items, which park, means the most to you, or which one are you really emotionally invested with, where can you help? And we could have those opportunities to be a little more flexible.
Okay, another thought that occurred to me would be, when we were talking about, the comments from the public and complaints and things like that, you might want to think about maybe you could have in our packets when we have a meeting, doesn't even need to be a presentation, but just information. For example, during the last 2 months, we had 30 complaints about the dead tree in Mills Park, or, that kind of thing, to kind of give us a feel for what's going on out there.
So what I'm hoping is that the next time that I can do like a presentation, or we can do that, is that we have something like this to show you, which is on the screen. That will be like a bar, and that bar, I know it's like hard to see there, but we'll have all of our parks like broken down, and we can manipulate like the graph to show any kind of stats that we want, like how many times we pruned trees at Mills Park, how many infields did we prepare for Little League games, and we'll have that information that, we will have and say, here you go, this is what, if you want to know about Mills Park, what are we doing there at Mills Park, we can just pull up Mills Park and say, this is how much we're mowing, this is how much we're trimming trees, shrubs, replacing trees, irrigation fixes, and so on. That's going to be the end goal for the maintenance staff, is to have all that in there.
Okay, well, I think what I was alluding to as well is, where the sore spots are, or where the issues are, so that we can kind of be aware of, there's 40 dead trees, and, sorry, but I keep going on about dead trees. I think it's because I've been accused of killing some. But anyway, so if we could have that information too, because that's kind of, as a commission, I think this would be important for us to know where there are where people are concerned, and where things aren't maybe working the way they'd like, or whatever. Any other comments from commissioners? If not, are there any comments from the public on this item? Did you have something, sir? Oh, I thought you, don't raise your hand. Anyway, okay, well, thank you very much, staff. I really appreciate it. And this, I can see you've got a long road ahead of you, and we'll look forward to seeing the results, hopefully, starting, by the time we're doing the budget, maybe this time next year. So that would be really great to have. All right, we don't take any action on this item, so we'll move on to the next one. The next item is item 3B for possible action. Review, discussion, possible recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding the fiscal year 2018-19 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department budget. Discussion may include operations, maintenance, infrastructure, preservation, asset management, which is done. Sorry. Capital improvement needs and supplemental requests. Department budget priorities. Oh, it keeps going on. Carson City tentative budget schedule and timeframes. Consideration of a letter of support on behalf of the Commission to the Board of Supervisors. And in this case, we're going to have Director Budge lead us off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I apologize for the very long agenda title. I just wanted to make sure we threw a potpourri of items just in case the budget discussion veered in one direction or the other. So we may or may not discuss all those things. But you do have, before I start, I want to make sure that you see you have 3 pieces of late material. We had a bunch of questions on the budget and requests for additional information. So I've provided one sheet which it's an update to Exhibit A, and it has a total on that as well. We also have this 11 by 17 color exhibit that also has graphs and some various information, and this came from our PowerPoint that we had at the budget workshops. And then there's also a very large PowerPoint presentation, which I'm not going to go through unless you have questions, but this is the PowerPoint that was presented yesterday by our Chief Financial Officer, Jason Link, and it has a lot of information about the overall city budget, where the city is for sales tax revenues and property taxes and different special revenue funds, enterprise funds, anything and everything you wanted to know about the budget is in that packet. And some people had some very global city questions about the budget. So I wanted to provide you with that information. It might be a little bit more than you were hoping to get, but I wanted to make sure that you had everything that is available to the public right now. And for our viewers at home, that will be on the city website soon, so everybody can have access to that information. I know our Chief Financial Officer is getting that PowerPoint presentation put up. So as the staff report indicates, this is an ongoing discussion, a continuation from our last meeting, where we primarily discussed the capital improvement projects and that larger spreadsheet, which I didn't provide in your packet, but we had last time. But this was what we discussed last time, was the 5-year CIP plan, and you provided your feedback and direction to staff about what you felt the priorities were for the city and for based on the comments you've received from the public, and we did have members of the public here that commented as well. So we did take that forward, and I just wanted to update you. Since we met, we did have our capital improvement project workshop, and that workshop consisted of elected officials, department heads, the city manager, our chief financial officer, and basically all of us in a room and discussing our needs. And we went through every department's, priorities for the year for capital improvements. And the long story short is there were over $12 million in requests before that capital improvement workshop. So it's a heavy lift, and those were a lot of high priority items citywide, not just parks, obviously, that cover from buildings to fleet to, our playgrounds, our swimming pool, all sorts of infrastructure needs throughout the city. And there are tremendous needs. Unfortunately, there's only $3.5 million available currently, unless the board changes that. But right now, there's only $3.5 million available citywide for that $12 million request. So we worked as a group to try to identify the top requests from each department and kind of whittle it from there. And there's a lot of camaraderie and citywide and trying to help each other out, and everybody's so sympathetic of each other's needs, but there's just really not enough money to go around for all those $12 million. So if you look at the second page, I'm going to skip Exhibit A and go to Exhibit B. You can see some highlights of kind of where we ended up throughout that CIP workshop. So if you skip down to CIP requests, we'll talk about the supplemental requests soon. But the CIP requests that will be moving forward for recommendation, for consideration by the Board of Supervisors, and these are not final or approved by any means, but are ones that are continuing on in the discussion based on your direction. These were computers for maintenance staff, iPads for the youth program. These are that safety protocol that we talked about at the last meeting, safety capping for fencing on sports fields, the playground replacement program, corporate yard equipment storage, and that is a replacement of storage that used to exist to protect our equipment. We previously had three-sided bays that were where the animal shelter currently is that we lost, so now our equipment is exposed to all the elements. So this would be a replacement of that to try to protect all this new equipment we've been trying to acquire. And then the trash compactor truck, so that's our trash truck that runs basically 7 days a week. If we have special events downtown like Nevada Day and we have our 75 trash cans downtown, that's the one that picks up the trash and compacts it so we can support special events and our parks. And that's a heavy lift as well, $175,000. And then a backhoe for the cemetery. So those are the ones that went through for the QF18 capital funding. To keep on the capital topic, there was about $550,000 we had available to work with. And I did want to thank the Redevelopment Citizens Committee and all these people that have come together. We have about 4 to 5 different funding sources, and it looks like we're going to be able to make the theater project happen, should the board approve the final amounts of funding. But that would include, the scope of work would be removing and replacing the theater seats, resurfacing the concrete floor that's crumbling underneath it, removing all of the lovely orange carpet that's serving as acoustic panels around the walls, repainting the theater, and putting in new acoustic panels that are a little more appropriate for the space. So that's about a total of a $600,000 project. And we're really excited to hopefully move forward with that. And then $350,000 to resurface the pool. So that is the new plaster for the 50-meter pool. And we'll have a couple bid alternate items on there if we can get the top pool as well resurfaced or things like that at the same time. But those were the top priorities that we heard from you, and that was about how much was available in Q18 for those capital projects. So before we move forward, do we have questions on capital?
Anybody have questions? I guess the only thing I would ask, because I did read the agenda item that's coming up before the Board of Supervisors, and Supervisor Bagwell alluded to it, that there's some new policies they're going to be looking at, like taking a percentage of funds and putting it towards fixed assets, and et cetera, et cetera. Should they do that? Is there something that keeps you awake at night that you would like to see added to this list? Or how might you go about dealing with that?
Well, just to give you an example, what we had identified for fiscal year 19 capital needs was more than $2 million. So we have a whole list ready to go based on the funding available. We could just pick something with the funding that worked. So a lot of our equipment needs are pretty dire. We have the oldest fleet in the entire city. We have a lot of needs. I'm not going to lie. So we can definitely find projects should funding become available.
Commissioner Bagwell?
But when you look at the list to see that that's $748,538 out of the general fund, out of the $3.5 million that's available. So if you look at parks in its entirety and say that's 10% of our general fund budget, but they got 21.38% of the capital. So I don't know that we can complain. every department's going to need more. I think Jennifer said it really well, that everybody had needs, but I think that Parks certainly fared well in the overall look, because they're getting a greater percentage than they even have of the general fund in the first place. So I was pleased to see the 21% of the.
All right, is there anybody?
Are we good to move on to the next?
Okay, you want us to do that before
Yeah, let's try to get through the whole thing, and that way if the public has,
Okay.
if that's all right with you. So next would be supplemental requests. A supplemental request is any request that we wanted added to our budget, our operating budget. So that would be staff or services and supplies, not capital. So everything outside of that. You'll see at the top of your Exhibit B, we have different things in park maintenance. We're requesting a new full-time equivalent. That's what FTE stands for. So that would be one full-time person, benefited position for park maintenance. You've heard me harp on we need more boots on the ground. Honestly, last year when we did the reorganization, if I had it to do over again, I would have taken the cost savings from the deputy director and put it toward a full-time position, had I known how difficult it would be to get the labor force in through seasonals. It's really difficult. Our pay isn't competitive, and we just have a hard time getting someone in the door. So if I had it to do over again, that's what I would have done. So that's basically where we're going with this. And as you heard Dave talk about all that our staff is responsible for, it's pretty tremendous. So we're asking, I can't even take care of the 1/10 of an acre I have at home, so I couldn't imagine taking care of what they do. So they do a tremendous job with the resources that they have available. We did also request a seasonal park aid ranger position that isn't being recommended by the Internal Finance Committee to move forward. We did request a budget for the park ranger program. We did implement $7,500 in the open space budget. For the other half of that, we have one park ranger funded out of open space, one funded out of the general fund. And this would be to support all of those programs that the AmeriCorps staff have started, and it's really reimagining that whole park ranger program and getting to do more things than just patrol our parks, do programming, do interpretation, do education, making sure that they have uniforms, things of that nature. There was really no dedicated budget for our park rangers. So this is to get that program whole again, and that was recommended to move forward. Also, we recommended that the AT&T cell tower lease that's at Lone Mountain Cemetery have that funding identified for parks. That is not moving forward as a recommendation from the Internal Finance Committee. We did lose the Cricket cell tower, as I had updated you previously. We were trying to find a way to offset our impact to the general fund by reallocating those funds, but that wasn't favorable from the Internal Finance Committee. We did recommend a clerical position for the community center so we can better serve the public. That's not moving forward as a recommendation. For youth and recreation, some maintenance
Did you
software.
say that one was a no?
It was a no. You're welcome to throw it back in, though. Yes, and we can, if there's any questions on these, we're happy to, that's why I have Dan and Dave here. They're the experts that put all the supplemental requests together and did such a good job on doing that. ActiveNet, as you know, that's our recreation reservation software system. Adding the support for those iPads for that safety security program for the youth program that supports that, and then When to Work and Time Clock annual software maintenance. So that's the scheduling software that we currently use at the pool. It's expanding our licensure for that, so we can use that in our youth program as well for scheduling. It's great. It's all mobile. All of the staff can get their schedule. They can trade schedules, things like that, all from their mobile phone. And it's proving to work really great in the aquatics division. Then for park maintenance, we asked for, I'm sorry.
Internal Finance Committee.
They did recommend both of those to move forward, the youth and recreation section. The Parks Department, for park maintenance, we asked for an investment in our maintenance and recreation staff for uniforms. Currently, Public Works averages $800 per worker as an investment in uniforms, and we were averaging just a little over 100 in park maintenance. So we weren't really providing the adequate personal protective equipment and things of that nature. So this is to resolve that, and I can let Dan talk in a little bit about what we want to do with the Recreation Division for uniforms. But trying to better support our staff, lifeguards only get one T-shirt or 2 T-shirts. We're not really giving the staff the tools and the uniform to do what we want to do. So that is moving forward. A seasonal employee wage increase, as I've said before, and you've heard all of us talk about, that we're grossly under the market for what we're paying seasonals all throughout our recreation division. And that did move forward. And then reallocating our staff distribution. So this is just basically phase 2 of our reorganization and getting people charged to where they're working. So that's just further support and reducing the impact to the general fund for the cemetery and things like that. We've done a really good job in a short time on the cemetery. I really want to point that out. I know that's something you haven't really heard about previously. I know Commissioner Curtis asked, why are we getting the cemetery budget? We haven't gotten it before. Well, it is part of the park system, and it's part of the Parks Department, and it's an important part of what we do. And it's an enterprise fund, so it has certain rules and guidelines that we have to follow. But previously, the general fund augmented and supported that budget by $100,000 annually. And we're now trending down to only having to augment at $33,000 in the last year and a half. So we're really going in the right direction. And we've added a clerical staff person at the same time. So not only are we being a little more financially sound with that operation, but we're providing better customer service at the same time. So I'm really proud of all the progress we've made at the cemetery. We have a long way to go. We're not there yet. We still have to address fees and other things like that. But that's what those numbers represent, is just following through with that reorganization that the board approved last year. So do you have questions on supplemental requests? And the staff can answer any if you're
Commissioner Bagwell?
curious.
So why did IFC not support the community center halftime? You just get a yes or no, you don't get a reason?
Well, I think they have a number they're trying to reach citywide, and if everybody got their supplemental requests, it'd probably be millions. So I think they had to prioritize, but no, I wasn't given a reason.
Any other questions? I just want to make an editorial comment. I was really surprised to see you had to ask for uniforms as an enhancement. I just think that, that's a right. It should be, with all the additional funds that the city is receiving from tax receipts and stuff, I think uniforms should not be a budget enhancement request. I think it should just be a given. But that's just my editorial comment. All right, then let's move on to the next wherever we're going next.
Do you want to talk about the letter now, or would you like to talk to the public first and then move on to that later? I don't want to confuse anything or go too fast.
I wanted to ask a couple of questions about some of the budget numbers
Okay.
that I had, because the thing is, what we're getting here is we're getting differences, and I understand you're shifting staff around from this department to that, and that may be why there's a decrease in this and an increase in that, but there were a couple of things that kind of struck me, so if you don't mind.
Not at all. Before we move forward, I do want to qualify that the numbers we provided you were estimates at the time that we had them. So those were the current numbers from finance when I provided the staff report. So the staff report's already a month old. So the numbers for the presentation that you see from this big presentation here, these numbers in here were finalized on Friday. So they will be a little bit different because they are based on estimates. They're not all actuals. So I just want to give you that caveat. And I'm sure Supervisor Bagwell can help me at any point because she's much better at the budget than I am. So.
Okay, well, I was looking at, the MAC. I thought that was interesting that the total is exactly the same as the year before. is it really that close in terms of, the same people, same,
Are
no
you
cost of living?
Okay, are you looking at the sheet here?
Exhibit A, the one
Okay.
you just gave us?
I just want to make sure we're looking at the same thing.
Yeah,
before.
157.63 from last year, and this year is 157.63. Just a slight difference of, God, not even $100 between, the salaries and the services. And one of the things I'm always interested in the MAC is, in terms of how well we're doing in terms, and I don't see any revenue numbers here anywhere, how well we're doing in terms of, getting the public to come in and pay for events and do things like that. So those are my questions about the MAC.
So I can tell you on the Exhibit A sheet, so obviously fiscal year 17 and 18 is still going on. So these numbers aren't actual. This is what was budgeted, and we are trending for that number, which is great. So for next year, unless there's staff salaries that are due, merit increases or things like that, that would be the only time that number would change. So it's okay that it's the same. Obviously, if a staff is due that, they adjust that number based on merit increases that are due, because how the city works, depending on your rating on your evaluation, it adjusts what your merit is. So they don't always, so that's why it's the same. And then, Dan can definitely, if you have questions about the MAC or participation and things of that nature, we're happy to answer that.
Well, again, one of the things that I commented on, and I don't know if our illustrious Diaz had a chance to look at this or not, but I've always had a lot of concerns about the budget. Ask anybody who has worked here in the past. But I believe it's our responsibility in the state statutes to approve the budget and send it on to the Board of Supervisors with our recommendation. And that's not like other commissions or committees. We are actually, by the state, asked to approve the budget. To me, this is not enough information to do that. I have no information on revenues. I don't know how well we're doing. I know when we get to fees and
here.
things like that,
Okay.
there's another spread.
It's in
I
here.
haven't even had a chance to
So
look at
Commissioner
this.
Curtis, because you made that comment, I did read the NRS today, and I'm not an attorney, but I did review. There's also in our city ordinance that provides support. So in the NRS, it says may provide guidance and approve budgets. So it's basically up to the local jurisdiction to provide the scope of work for the advisory boards, and you are advisory to the Board of Supervisors. It does talk about in our local code that they may recommend and they will review, but this board does not approve the budget. So you technically don't have to take action. It's not mandated that you do. You're welcome to, and you're welcome to make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And jump in, Iris, if I'm saying this incorrectly. But I did review that today just to make sure that I was remembering it correctly. But it's not mandated. It's not required. You're not approving a budget. So if there's information that you're missing, I'm happy to provide that to you. If you do look in the late material, because from your comments, there are a lot of revenue numbers in this presentation, and we can go through that if you'd like to.
Yes, I would.
But all
I'm
of our
sorry,
revenue outside of the cemetery goes into the general fund.
I understand that,
Okay.
but we've been talking, in the future, that may change. There may be a special fund or something created. But it also tells how well we're doing, in terms of looking at revenues. Because I was involved with the building of the MAC for years and years, and one of the things we looked at was what is going to be the net cost. How well are we going to be able to run this on our own without depending on general fund support, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, because I didn't see any information. Now, apparently, we have it. But in order to do this budget, I'm sorry, I hate to weigh people down with paper and time, but I think if we're going to do it, then I think we need to see what the information is. So I don't know if you want to jump to that now or continue with Exhibit A, or there's just a couple of other questions I think I have. You've answered some of them already.
So if you look in the packet that we provided, page 4 of the packet has multipurpose athletic center. It has the general fund support, the different funding sources that we get, and it also has a revenue line item. And you'll see that the revenue is going up every year. So we've only had, a couple years of operation, so we don't have a huge trend like we do in other areas. But the first year, the 2017, was $56,750. We're estimating and trending for this year a little over $66,000. We weren't sure where we were going to be next year, so they just kept that flat. But we're really seeing a huge increase in use with pickleball, our tournaments. I mean, we're seeing a lot of increase in use at the MAC. Does that help
Great.
answer what you're looking for?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Exactly. Commissioner Bagwell?
So maybe to give us a little perspective is when I look, and I don't think this is only Parks and Recreation, I think it's an issue citywide, is that when we bring a new project online like the MAC, we do projection models. And we say, this is what we expect to happen. And so what would be nice is to go back to what we originally thought and envisioned and said, okay, the MAC program was projected to, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can get close. We were going to do $100,000 in revenue and 2.5 staff, and this is what it was going to do. It would be nice to be able to track from the original perspective on any program that we're doing to say, are we hitting the mark? We're not hitting the mark. If we're not, is it because we don't have the right services? Is it because we don't have enough, pretend parking spaces, so they're not able to utilize it at the right hour? So that we have a little bit more ability to help guide maybe some of the decisions and the resources so we can be more help during the year to say, hey, what we really want to do next budget is work towards X to make that more viable, or to know when to say, oops, it's not working out, and move the resources somewhere else of which they can be more advantageous. So I think that's a little bit, maybe if I'm paraphrasing what Donna was after, I think it's a little bit difficult to do at this moment in time. I think we have to really, when you're bringing us the program of the month, it would be great to bring that program's budget with it. If that makes sense, what I'm saying, and that we can use let's have a 5-year history of whatever, mowing the lawns. But we start bringing perspective to each project, and then it might be easier for us when we get to the budget section, we're more knowledgeable, more helpful, and maybe that's just a perspective we can bring to the process.
We can definitely do that. The MAC is a great one. I mean, that
Yes.
was the only facility we've built in how many years. So it's a good one to look back at what was anticipated for participation.
Right.
We'll have this discussion again as we bring the fees here,
Right.
because
That will
the
help.
MAC fee structure was based on market research, but also a best guess on what would work here locally. And there's some fees that are working great and some that aren't, and we've had a discussion about that. So I think that will be an ongoing conversation that we have, but we can definitely keep that in mind and bring that forward.
Well, and then on this form, if I can ask in the future that, so that everyone understands what they're reading on this form, where it says total, that's total expense. And in some places, it's also total revenue, depending on if it's a neutral item. So if we could just get it broken down to be clearer, because some have ending fund balances and get to carry over their money, like question 18. Some that are just the pure general fund do not, but it's difficult unless you're a budget guru.
Well, and I
What am I
apologize for
looking
that.
at?
We created this just a quick last minute this afternoon because our emails weren't working, so I had just gotten Commissioner Curtis's emails. So we took snapshots of the budget presentation, and all of the slides had those titles, so I apologize for that. Yeah.
No, nothing to apologize for. It's a great document, and it's a step in the right direction. And again, we're just getting better and better data and information to help us. So thank you for the hard work on that.
Yeah, and I just want to echo, I really appreciate the effort that, you've made. And I'm not looking for reams of paper. I'm not interested in how much you're spending on books in the recreation program type of thing. But when there's, differences between, let's say, just looking at Parks Administration, I mean, that's over a $100,000 drop. And so maybe another thing would be just a little note below this, if you were going to continue with this format, that would say, the reason why is because we moved, blank number of dollars and positions to X budget, or something like that, to kind of explain it. Again, I'm not looking line item by line item, but just anything like that, or, maybe in parks maintenance, let's say the price of gas went up a lot, as it has in the past, and it's really affected, obviously the costs of, maintaining the parks. So that might explain why, there was a big increase there. But anyway, so I guess I'm asking for administration and maintenance why the numbers have changed, if you have an idea.
So for the Parks Administration, it's basically the reorganization that were the biggest impacts. So eliminating the deputy director position, and also we had one of the park rangers in park administration. So we moved that park ranger over to where it should be to be consistent with the organizational chart, because now the park rangers report to our park superintendent, David Navarro. So we tried to put that over the budget that he manages. So we wanted to make sure all the people that they supervise match the budgets that they supervise. So that's really the majority of that. We also did have a cost savings. Our previous department business manager was here for a very long time. She was a lot more expensive than our current one, so there's some savings there. So just a change in staff. So, do you want to park maintenance? And I'm sorry, what was the question in park maintenance?
Well, maybe you answered it. Is that's where you moved the ranger to?
Yes, that's correct. Yep, that's where we moved that ranger to.
Okay, well, moving on the quality of life, we used to get a spreadsheet that showed, the open space, which is really not our bailiwick, although I guess we can say yay or nay on it, but that's really, Open Space Committee's purview, I think. But it would show beginning balance. It would show the money coming in. It would show then the ending balance. And in between, for maintenance and for capital, it would show, as much as you could, estimated expenses and then what you're proposing for the next year. On the capital budget, as I recall, and I may be incorrect on this, but I thought the way it worked, and I'm glad you're looking through that to try to find it, because I don't know where it is. But what I'm concerned about is those line items are projects. For example, I know there's one for dog parks. And my concern would be that for some reason, staff had decided, well, we're not going to be doing anything with dog parks for a while, so let's move this into the gun budget, or into, a big project we're trying to do at Centennial Park or something like that. So to me, again, I think it's our responsibility to be looking at the capital by line item. And then if there's carryover, because we've had additional revenues from sales tax, and I know we have, because I read about it in the paper, I'd like to see where that additional might be applied. Now, I think you've showed us in the capital improvement budget that there's money, that's going into the theater and the pool. But I guess I just want to visualize it. I know it's another spreadsheet. It's more work.
It's already.
And you've got it. All right.
I think I have most of it. I wouldn't say I totally have it. So I wish there were page numbers. So in the middle, somewhere, and it says quality of life fund in, the chief financial officer's spreadsheet, it does talk about the Quality of Life Fund and what is estimated for 2019, and it has the fund totals, and it's divided up by park maintenance, park capital, and open space. So this is going to be a portion of what you just said that you wanted. And it has all of the salaries, the wages, the benefits, the money identified for land acquisition, the amount that goes to the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, that's all divided out. So it looks like this. I apologize. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to find it. Okay. It's almost in the, yeah, exactly in the middle. It's right after the page that says special revenue funds.
Got it.
If that helps, okay. So this is an overview of the sales tax and what's estimated. Obviously, everything in this fund, if there are carryover funds, it goes toward that capital improvement project list that you provided guidance on. So there are opportunities. I know we've talked about like sport court resurfacing and dog parks, and we've talked about a lot of the other things. But basically, it boils down to what were the fiscal year 19 priorities that you provided direction on. And that total for all categories was $2,193,000. So those were all the items that you previously provided guidance on. And the majority of those, as we discussed, were safety concerns. So those are the items that would be funded first, but all of those items are not going to be funded, if that makes any sense. So there was only $550,000, as we talked about before, in quality of life that's undesignated. And that funding is what we're recommending to the top priorities, which we talked about, are resurfacing the pool and the theater to make that happen. So to make all the other things happen, what's going to go? And that's really a tough decision that we all have to make. And it's sort of, it's a very difficult position to be in. The Quality of Life initiative was really progressive at the time. It's a tremendous help to us, so we don't have to entirely, depend on the general fund. But at the same time, it doesn't generate the money that we truly need to have, a true infrastructure preservation program. So we do have those priorities. We have all of the priorities that you guys had. Any rollovers or carryover will be funded right out of that. So that's how we'll do that right now until our asset management is complete. Does that make sense?
Okay, but what about the items that were already budgeted that are still left on, there's still funds in them? There's several.
Well, there were line items and placeholders, and as projects became available, they would make projects, and Supervisor Bagwell, jump in at any time. But I know I haven't been here too long, so I don't want to say something incorrectly. But as we had projects for like a dog park project, or as we have a project at the rifle range, we add a line item for that project until that project is spent out. That doesn't mean that that item remains moving forward. So, for example, the rifle range is a great one right now. We've received multiple grants. We're installing a vault toilet, which is so needed out there. We're doing enhancements to the berms, and we're doing some site work. We also received an NRA Foundation grant to improve some signage out there. So we have 3 different projects. It does get a project created as a line item in the budget. We are using some quality of life funds toward the match. It's all compliant. But once that project is done, it's not going to stay on the list, if that makes sense. It's not that we won't ever do rifle range projects again.
Let me try to
If I could just
answer where
say
you're going, Donna.
before this, because, sorry I've been on this board so long, but it's been my understanding that we would be moving those funds to different line items as well as you. In other words, it's something that we would approve. And I certainly wouldn't approve moving the $5,000 out of the dog park someplace else, just because it hasn't been spent. I would personally want to be the one that argues to keep that there, because I know we have dog park expenses coming up.
Let me try it a little bit different. When you look at the first line on this page that talks about beginning balance, so I already know that none of those are accurate. So what really happens is, pretend just what you said, we had 5,000 The perfect example, actually, is the Bob Boldrick Theater. We have, what, 118? 197 something. So what happens is when we estimate the beginning balance, that assumes that all the project lines that we have dedicated dollars to are being spent. So I know that there's 197, so you can't see it on this page because we've already maintained the line item that we've committed. And so all you do in the budgeting process is say, I assume I'm going to still spend the 197, so I'm only going to have, by the time the year gets done, I'm only going to have 93,000. So we maintain those line items. If they wanted to cancel a project that's in the quality of life, then they'd come back and talk to us and say, we're recommending, because we did it a couple years ago on one
Gold.
project. Yeah.
Wasn't Ross Gold?
Somewhere where we finally said, okay, that's it. The project's languished for too long. Cancel it and reallocate it. And then it'll come back through to the Board of Supervisors to say, that one's out and this new one is in. So we did it on residential park construction tax. We moved it to Ross Gold. So they do continually review, but what we could ask for is the designated lines, which is what you're missing in this report, because we still have a couple of projects that have designated dollars.
We have a lot of projects, like the 197,000 was great. It's been in there, Roger set it aside years ago and just was trying to do something at the theater, and we finally just are really lucky, and we got a lot of momentum and support from RAC and Supervisor Bagwell, and a lot of stars kind of aligned, honestly, for that project. Or we get a grant like Ross Gold. You were just talking about that. That's a great example. We were able to write a lot of grants and leverage that residential construction tax, so we didn't have to use the whole pot of residential construction tax. So we can reallocate that. Staff doesn't have the authority to do that. It has to be, through board action. So
we could just get that list, because it's the same, it's not on ours, but it's the same issue in open space. It has a lot more than 74,000. I want to think there's, I don't know, $1 million and something sitting in land acquisition dollars. So this report's trying to give us what's available this year for us to work with. So we're not tapping into prior obligated.
And we're so
designated
lucky
lines.
with quality of life because we can carry that over. That's not going to disappear like the general fund does at the end of the year. So we're really lucky that we can roll over those funds, where the general fund funds, that goes to the black hole.
Okay, well, thank you, both of you. I thought I was hearing you say something different, so, but it sounds like we're on the same page. Yeah, it would be appreciated in the future if we, just have an idea in terms of, because this is a big fund, and like I say, there was an increase. Well, I can't really tell from this exactly what our revenue increase was from sales tax receipts, even for the current year, much less what's anticipated for next year. But, we're talking about some money here.
It's in this. It'll be some light reading for you later, but that is in here.
Okay,
I don't know
I'll
which
find it
page.
somewhere.
4% estimate.
Okay,
I do have one more question. So, when you bring us the list of the prior designated projects that are still in reserves, can you also bring me the information on the debt service? Because right now, we're still funding $641,000 in debt service, and I would like to know when that, I think I saw that some of the park bonds will, not too far out, will be getting paid off?
This is a great time because I still have questions on the debt service, and I had a conversation today with our CFO about that, and which bonds did they pay for? What did those bonds fund? I haven't been here to know, so I wanted some more information, and I'd be happy to get that and bring that back. So when we bring our project list, do you only want question 18, or do you want?
The only place that you have reserved dollars is question 18.
And
is
we do
general
our
and any
our
donation
donations,
or,
gifts
right.
and donations.
So yeah,
which isn't a
because I
lot.
think again it can help us to say, hey, are we just short $20,000, and maybe we do a campaign to I hate to see projects languish with reserved dollars, especially if, and even though someone might not like something, but maybe we do want to reprogram something and get one of the projects completely funded, right? So
Sure.
if I look on that project list and say, this has been there 20 years, this has been there 10 years, this is 5, well, why not reprogram one and get one off the list?
And
Unless it was a specifically donated dollar, obviously.
Of course.
We can't take that, but
So we-
I think we're missing the boat if we don't look at it occasionally.
we can definitely bring that forward, and then I will say the staff for the capital improvement projects that were supported this last round, we've almost completed all of those. So those will be completed by the end of the fiscal year. We're not doing this where we carry it over. We had really good hard numbers on those projects, that equipment. That's 100% done. So it's great. It helps us because we're getting the resources that we need and we're not having to roll it over. So I think that's more of the practice that we're trying to have. If we identified it for next year, we're doing it next year. We're not going to let it sit for a couple years. If we have adequate funding, we're going to make it happen.
I guess one thing that was brought up, though I don't see anything on, is, unless it's in one of these, is a residential construction tax, RCT funds.
You don't have that because there's been so many changes and we have such an uptick in development. I don't have current numbers for that, so that's something I can bring forward to you probably at the next. We weren't ready for that, and I didn't want to put numbers in there that weren't accurate and correct.
Could I ask maybe just for the next meeting if if we could maybe get an update on that, or if you're not ready, then maybe the following one, something within the next few months.
For the residential construction tax?
Yep. And then also, I think if you wouldn't mind also what we were just talking about, those reserves, if you could just bring those I hate to wait another year to then think about that again. So if we could just add it on to the next meeting, just so we could review what the existing stuff in process is, that'd be good too.
We can do that. And where I wasn't comfortable with the residential construction tax, because I haven't been here long, a lot of times we have development agreements. And so sometimes we will collect residential construction tax only to have to reimburse it to a developer. So I'm just not comfortable telling you all of those funds that through an agreement are sort of earmarked to be refunded to
Right.
those developers and what money is available. Because once we figure out what money is truly available, we want to use that for leverage for grants and other opportunities to make some of these projects happen. But I need to be really comfortable with those agreements that, we have. Even at Silver Oak, they're on phase 25 or something, but those are resident permits that are pulled and then refunded to that one. So you see a big number and you get excited, but it's really not our money. It has to go back to the developer. So I just want to make sure we sort of do an internal audit of that and make sure it's absolutely accurate before we present it to you.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, so should we move on to the letter, or do we want to see how we feel about what we've heard so far, or do you want whatever you...
Just don't forget about public comment.
I won't forget about public comment, but are we ready for public comment? Does anybody have anything they would like to say about what they've heard about the budget so far? I think the last item...
This could take a while.
I think the last item that that's in this item, I believe, you had the list of everything there, but I think we've covered most of it, would be the letter.
So last year, the commission felt very, very strongly about wanting to provide a letter to the Board of Supervisors about what they felt were the budget priorities and the needs for the Parks Department. So I took what you wrote last year, tried to edit it and make it work for this year. Just know that this was drafted before, the capital improvement workshop and before the supplemental requests and, what still is sort of in play, but you're obviously welcome to put whatever that you want in this letter if you choose to do so. So I wanted to just provide you a starting point. I know Commissioner Curtis has some recommended edits. I'm happy to edit it for you, and however you want to do that. I do want to talk about the budget schedule, so you're aware of what's going to happen. April 19th, the board will consider the tentative budget, and they'll dive into these supplemental requests, CIP, you name it. Everything is up for discussion that's a part of next year's budget. If there's questions on reorganizations or staff changes or staff requests, it's going to be all on the plate. That is the opportunity for the public to come forward and say what they think should be the board's budget priorities. So anybody watching this at home, that's the meeting we really encourage people to go. And you as advocates for the Parks Department, that would be the board meeting that I would really encourage you to attend and voice your opinions.
Sorry?
Do you want me to comment on the letter?
Yeah, if I may, I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear what you said. You want to comment on the letter?
So, part of the issue is, again, I just believe in being straight up, right? Is the difficult issue is I don't think a letter is necessary unless you're asking for something different than was already recommended through the city staff. So, to me, if you're going to write a letter, other than just general support, but I'm pretty honest with all of you, that's not going to move me at the board level, right? So, to me, it's do a letter if you want to do something like, we thank the city staff for recommending the budget of blah, 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 and we noticed that you didn't fund X. And we feel strongly that the Board of Supervisors should give deference to that request. To me, that's then, and you make your argument, so one of the things, whatever she got a no on, right? So if I'm going to do a letter, the recommendation from me would be, tell me why one of the things she got a no on is so important that you really want the Board of Supervisors to override what the IFC committee recommended. And otherwise, there's just no reason to do the letter. So, I don't know how you all feel about the things that were no's. I'm not articulating that. I'm just saying the value of a letter, if you want it to have weight and have meaning, it's just my thought.
So for last year, for the meeting that we had last year, that was because we were requesting additional funding because we actually made money for the first time
We did.
since I've been on the board.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right?
It had meaning.
And- yeah, exactly. So I could see where that is, but
We want it.
But are we in this similar boat this year, where there's a little bit more money, and it's worth reviewing this list and seeing we want to really fight for something?
That's what I'm asking.
And I'm glad Lori brought that up, because that was my thought, is a letter's great, but I think about where the supervisors are, and I look at how much paperwork I get in the course of a day, and it's one more paper to have to read and comprehend. And so the letter really needs to have some meat to it. It needs to be succinct, short and to the point, and say, yeah, this is specifically why we took the time to prepare this letter. I think by doing that, you get more bang for your buck. Or more buck for your bang in this case.
Talk about the community center clerical position. We're obviously at a slight disadvantage because we don't know why, whether, like you said, is it because it just couldn't compete in the totality of everything they were looking at? And then for me, so now I'm going to throw it back the other way, is what is the justification? Why do you feel so strongly in parks that the value of that, right? So why do I have to have it? What value do I bring to the public? What's the true value of adding a $15,000 hourly to, I'm assuming, the front desk out there is what we're talking about. And so what's the issue? What's the gain? And is it something that you feel this commission should fight for?
I'd be happy to justify that. Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent. So the main arguments that we had as far as the need for clerical positions here is, I mean, for those of you who use this building a lot, which we all do for these meetings, and we have over 100,000 people that come into this facility every year with the theater and our youth programs and for public meetings and other activities, and yet there's no designated position to get information from. And it's for a lot of people who come into this facility that we've heard from, it's confusing. They don't know what's the main door, where do we go for information. So having somebody that could provide that service, in addition to having guaranteed office hours where we can post those office hours, we'll have someone who can answer a phone and answer questions about the theater usage and availability for reservations in regard to some of the facilities here specifically. And other things that are going on. In addition to that, that position will serve a really important function for our staff in reducing some of the work that they have to do, office work, for our manager here, and then also our youth program supervisor. Particularly, the main thing that's happening in the next couple of months is that we've partnered up with a children's cabinet. So that's to kind of take over the scholarship program that we were offering through our youth program, where they're going to be the ones who are reimbursing us for the participants who qualify for low-income families and reimbursement. There's a lot of paperwork that we have to track as far as daily timesheets and things for every child who qualifies for children's cabinet. Their parents have to check them in, check them out with time, and it's a lot of managing. It's we don't exactly know what the cost benefit's going to be because it's new for us, but we know based off of what we were using for scholarships, which was about $15,000 a year, that we're assuming it's going to be in that general area, because our qualifications are pretty similar to that of children's cabinet. So if they qualified for our scholarships, they'll qualify for children's cabinet. And so that would be a cost offset of this position, of the youth program, that this position would heavily help us keep track of all that office work that we'll have to do in order to benefit from using children's cabinet. And in addition to just a lot of other office tasks and variety of things that we'll be able to do to help put the focus where, like on the youth programs here, that they can focus on making sure that our youth programs are top quality and safe and not have to spend as much time dealing with accounts payable and things like that for, the youth programs, and that office position would cover all that, plus provide a service to the community just being here to help with their needs.
So may I ask, for example, maybe putting it succinctly, what is missing because we don't have that position? Is the community and members of the public complaining because they're walking in here and there's nobody there to talk to? I want to see about my kids' swimming lessons, and there's nobody here that can explain that to me. Or how do I rent the Bonanza room? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if they're complaining, we don't hear about it because we don't have a person here to talk to them. No, sorry. No, we do. We do get complaints about just not having that information here. And then the main purpose is we do send, right now, if somebody has to register for youth programs or anything, we have to send them over to the pool, which fortunately isn't too far away, but just from a customer service point of view, we'd like to be able to take care of them on location. This is where their kids are. They're coming to pick their kids up here. We like to be able to answer their questions with the staff who are more knowledgeable about the program here, rather than sending them to another facility where they have to take care of that.
I still need to follow up on one thing, though, because I want to make sure I understood, or to clarify this correctly. Where do you currently pay the $15,000 in scholarships? Is it not a payment, it's just a waiver of a fee? And now you actually can bring the actual revenue in?
Correct. Basically, what we've been doing this last year is it's just if they qualify for a scholarship, it's just they're discounted. So it's less revenue that we're bringing in. And so with Children's Cabinet,
You can bill and get...
Correct. Children's Cabinet will be reimbursing us basically that same portion or thereabouts.
So it'll actually be real revenue, though, is what... So
Yes.
what I'm getting to is, I don't know what, again, sorry, I wasn't... When you also said elected officials, I want to make sure it's clear to everyone, no Board of Supervisor member serves on the IFC or the committee. We get it fresh at the board level like everyone else, because I constantly hear people say, all the decisions are already made, so there's no reason to go and fight for the budget. It's not true. None of us serve on that, and we can take a fresh look. So are you saying that you submitted a proposal that said there was 15,000 potential in scholarships available to cover the cost of the position?
We did, in the proposal, mention that we do hope that there is that offset, but being that with Children's Cabinet in the first year, we don't have hard numbers, so we don't know what that number is going to be. We hope it's going to be at least in that range, just based off of kind of our estimations and things, but we don't have that number.
But you have waived or reduced fees of 15,000. Is that a
That is
fair
true, yes.
answer?
And I do want to point out, so 2 years ago, it was different in our budget than it currently is now. So this is something that's evolved, at least since I've been here. We used to have the $15,000 budgeted, and then we did all these budget transfers to offset that.
Right.
We realized you might as well just do the discount. Why spend the staff administrative time moving everything around when we still capped it at 15,000 amount in discount? So it's gotten better, but obviously the Children's Cabinet will probably be a much better solution, and hopefully we can provide more people. And they have a lot of resources to help let people know about our program, so our program's participation might actually go up just from this partnership.
And then I'm going to throw the little wrinkle in, because I have a pretty good memory. One of the reasons that the clerical was lost out there is really we moved the staff to the MAC. And, well, I know that staff was moved from that office to the MAC. And so that changes your coverage level here, obviously, also. And so I really question, again, that you go back and look at, I'm not saying necessarily, let me take it back, that it was a clerical, but staff used to be positioned here that could help answer the questions, do the stuff, and those were moved to the MAC. So that left this one person, right? Do we just have one person here now? Eric?
We have two full-time. We have Andrew, our youth supervisor, and both of them who are, Eric's in the theater, Andrew's running around checking school sites. So no one who's really guaranteed to be here. My understanding, and you're talking, well, neither Jen or I were here when that position was cut, but my understanding when I talked to the moved, was that was in 2010. So it was well before the MAC was built. But that was that the services and all the registration was kind of brought over to the pool, that they would kind of take on that for the whole department, or at least the recreation division, and take away that, not have that presence here because the pool was there. But now with our programs, trying to grow those and provide better service for our community, we'd like to be able to bring that back.
I think for me, what I see, and again, it's not a parks issue, it's a citywide issue, is that I often feel trades are made. It'd be better to move this guy over here or this person over here, and we can get that. And then 2 or 3 years later, it's like, oh my gosh, we really need this. And you're like, I feel like I just got whipsawed on the deal here. But no matter what, I don't know if this is the one we want to send the letter on, to say that we have an opportunity to meet a community need, to have a fixed time position at the community center and the opportunity to collect the revenue to support it. So maybe this is one we want to look at to get permission to put it in, because I don't know who they're going to have do all the paperwork to access the dollars from the Children's Cabinet. So I don't know how the rest of you feel, but.
Well, if I may, I think we need to look at the other no's as well, since we're looking at this one. But just as Jen said earlier, hindsight in terms of, moving the deputy position and maybe not doing something different. So it's okay if we move somebody to the MAC and then discovered later that we really need somebody here, because you guys are out in the field. You're not always sitting behind a desk there in that office. And I guess, if I had 3 kids I've toting in to find out about recreation programs, I'd kind of like to have to know that there was going to be somebody here, say, on Tuesdays between, 1 and 3 or whatever. Second thing is, are we publishing a recreation magazine still, or a newsletter, or whatever it is that we used to have, where the community knows when the swimming pool lessons are, and the volleyball, et cetera, et cetera? And if we're doing that, I think we need to have somebody here to let people, because they're going to be coming in and asking questions about that.
Yes, we are still publishing that. So yeah, we do that 3 times a year. So that is out, and we would love to have them be able to answer the questions about the guide and all of our programs.
Okay, so before we decide on that one, maybe we should take a look at the park ranger, seasonal park ranger aid. That was also not recommended. Is there any discussion on that?
That came up after spending this past year working with the park rangers. Like before, I just had one of the rangers who was underneath me, and he was just mainly dedicated to the park system. Now I've added the open space ranger as well. So now we added in the 8,000 plus acres out there, and come to find out this past year that it is a huge burden in a huge area for 2 park rangers like to cover, and especially when we have our special events. From probably the time of April through October, it's really hard for them to cover everything because of everything that is going on in the town here, and also going on in the open spaces as well. So there is a need for them to have help in that area, and so it was something that I requested, and again, also I feel that's a great need. I think one thing that's going to help, and it wasn't mentioned earlier in my presentation about the asset management and about the request tracker, is that the park rangers are also using it as well, and it's going to be separated out from the parks operations, so we'll be able to have a pretty good idea of what they're doing out there as well, and everything that they're also providing.
Is there any revenue offset? Because if it's needed for special events, is there? No?
At this time, no.
I'm just going to jump into one additional thought. If you think about the April through October timeframe, it's just lighter, later, and people are out and active in our parks. And, I always try to promote education over enforcement, but having someone out there to educate people to pick up after their pets or put their dogs on leash or help, when we do have special events in our parks or anywhere, just having another body is really helpful. Imagine having 8,000 acres covered by 2 people. Well, they need days off. They have vacation time. A third person would really help, not just with enforcement, but with our education opportunities. And that's the time period when we can go out and get people hiking and doing this programming that all of our AmeriCorps volunteers have been trying so hard to build up. So just having that third person just on a temporary basis during our busy season would be really helpful.
Excuse me. I would just add, Jennifer, if we're talking about scripting another letter and talking about what's going to resonate with people, the 2 things I'm hearing, I get workload. We live in a community right now where we're overworked because the economy's coming back. People left, it's hard to fill positions and all that stuff. And we'll catch up over time, but it's going to take a while. But if I'm sitting on a panel that's saying, convince me you need something, probably the 2 things I'm hearing today that would weigh with me would be safety and or revenue. If you're saying, hey, we need this because it's going to generate revenue, I'm going to listen. Why do you want that? I understand all the other factors. And when you talk about needing a position, I think safety is the selling point on that one. I know if I'm out somewhere doing something, or I'm at a dog park where there's a bunch of people, and I agree, you're out there to a lot of these places, you never see a ranger, really. Not that they're not there, I know they're out there working, but they can't cover all the ground. And there's a safety component to the thing. So if there's a way to, in my opinion, to sell something you want, you might consider that.
But we're going to compete with the safety, with the fire department and the sheriff's office too, that's competing. And so I look for us to be relevant and realistic and try and give weight to our letter to say, you know, I'm comfortable, but again, and we're a group that works together here. I'm pretty comfortable with asking for the community center position that can then be brought forth as an additional letter that the board can to dive into, you know. And if we ask for too much in that letter, which is just everything that she was told no, I don't know that that's effective either. You know, whatever Jennifer got told no, the board, this commission, so, and I think that everything they need, I'm sure her whole $3 million list is needed, so I have no doubt that everything that they submitted for is a true need. So I don't want to go there. And maybe the question is different for me. If you were prioritizing between the community center and the the park ranger, which one has higher value to your, same problem, right? But I know, you're like, oh, shoot.
They're all important.
They are.
Equally.
But if I were to try and say, how am I going to convince the Board of Supervisors to give me one more thing? What is it?
And I think these are all great comments. Another avenue you might want to consider, since the letter is a lot, I get that. I just took it from last year as a starting point. Maybe just as a consensus, and then maybe encourage the chair to go in person and say, as a board, this was our top priority, and just in person at the board meeting might resonate more than a letter that's getting buried. Because thinking about Commissioner Cassiopo's comments, I get it. You know, you're going to have a huge binder or binders probably with the budget, and that is a lot of paper. So perhaps, you know, that personal advocacy at the meeting might resonate more based on the consensus of the commission.
We'd be fortunate to have anybody show up for a budget hearing. You're right, it might make a real presence at the meeting. Somebody says, wow.
So she's nominated.
Yeah, but I mean.
And the board members
Right.
were great. We did have 3 board members attend from this committee last year, and some of the open space members to help be our advocates, and they did speak, and I thought it was very helpful, and it was appreciated by us, so we're not always the one telling that story.
We have one other item, it's the cell tower, but it says revenue.
Yeah, I don't think that's when we should probably move forward. Finance wanted to keep it where it was, and I don't know the mechanics behind it, to be honest, so that's probably not a low-hanging fruit.
My only question, was it ever revenue that was allocated to parks and got taken away?
It goes to the general fund, and obviously the department itself is subsidized by the general fund, so in theory, we're getting some of that anyway, but I was just trying to offset. We had some huge hits this year, so we lost the cell tower that was about $15,000. We now absorb the overhead for Marathon, which we never paid before, so that's about $60,000 to $70,000. And then we lost the school district maintenance contract, and while it's less to take care of, we did pay for a lot of staff and other services and supplies out of that budget. So collectively, it's $160,000 that's no longer in our budget. So we were just trying to be creative and not have to just go back and beg for more general fund money, because that's not how I want to try to operate.
Okay, may I still read the, I did put together something, and it's maybe, you know, in thinking about this, maybe, because we used to do an annual report to the Board of Supervisors, and maybe what I suggested in the letter is more appropriate for that, I don't know. But I'm taking on the issue of what our next agenda item is. And so under staffing, I was just trying to come up with something. So if you don't mind, it's not that long. If I can find it now. Okay, this would be staffing. In addition, Staffing is not, and please excuse, this is the first draft. Staffing is not adequate to keep up with the demands of the current maintenance, as well as providing for increasing need to staff programs and repair and replace aging equipment. Added to this are the double number of special events occurring over the past 5 years. Staff are not only concerned on how they can meet this need, they are more concerned with the safety and adequate of the equipment used to make these events a success. Something needs to be done. The Commission respectfully requests the Board of Supervisors take the situation of inadequate staffing and poor condition of our parks and recreation facilities and call on the community to help come up with solutions for the sake of the safety and enjoyment of our community and those visiting Carson City. This is not a situation that can or should be handled on a piecemeal basis by providing a few $1,000s of general funding a year. If Carson City is to continue to have the reputation of one of the best places to play and recreate, we must act now. Stunning, wasn't it?
I think it really relates to the next issue on
Well, it does
special
relate to it,
events,
but
not-
what I'm calling on is during the budget process, and again, maybe this is more appropriate to do if we're going to be bringing an annual report to the board, but I think my idea, I get this from having been on the foundation and being out in the community and talking with the director and other things that, that maybe I can be doing to help, is we gotta, this is not a budget issue strictly. I think it's a community action need, and so we need to get the community aware of what some of these problems are. I mean, all we need is to have a special event and a bunch of people fall down on the bleachers and forget the rest of the budget. It's all going to go to all those liability issues. So that's all I'm trying to do, is see if we can generate something. And maybe the budget isn't the appropriate time to do it, but. I don't hear a big consensus to add that to the letter, so it's not going to happen.
I don't think we're suggesting we're doing a letter. I thought we were suggesting that we were going to have someone actually come to the budget meeting and advocate for adding the community center. Thank them for everything that's in the, say, we certainly agree with the recommendations currently being considered for the tentative budget, but we would really like you to also consider the clerical part-time position at the community center, because it has the opportunity to generate revenue and meet a need, and kind of really make the case for the position to be added so that the board can say yes or no. Because the good part about having a person present, it calls us to attention and calls us to make a decision, right? Versus getting a letter or something that I can ignore, right? But when the person's sitting there, then they're looking for a response. And so when we make our motions, we usually then handle anything that came up in public comment and say, okay, yes, we're going to cover that, or no, we're not, or thank you, but I don't see us going there. But so I think that the public comment's the best avenue.
I agree. I think Donna's letter is, I mean, you didn't say anything in there that I disagreed with. It's just, we're to a sense, we're preaching to the choir. Everybody knows that what Jennifer's requesting, what the department's requesting is needed. But I think we have to pick something, and I don't disagree that the clerical position is something we can stand behind, and we can say it provides a community service. It has the potential for revenue generation, but I think you have to go to the supervisors and say, again, thank you for granting this. We really think this is important, and here's why, and give them 3 definitive answers. We want this position for this, this, and this. So they can basically what I'm saying is quantify it.
And I really don't think, even if it was a net loss or a net cost of $5,000, maybe they could only generate 10 in the end and 5. I just don't think it's going to break the bank. And yet, what can that service provide? And so I think that that's also an important thing, is that how do you weigh it against? And you can always say, hey, let us give it a try. Because part of the concern is this a contract that you're getting with Children's Cabinet? I should ask that. Is this a 3-year contract, 5-year contract, 1 year, give it a try?
It's not I mean, it's an ongoing thing as long as we're in an agreement with how it works. So I mean, we can back out at any point with, but I mean, they don't have the reasons, my understanding, to really back. I mean, for them, it's just a place that they can send people who are seeking services to. So they really were anxious for us to join back in with them, and I think just as long as we want that service, it will continue as long as they're operational.
I did want to just point out the model that we're looking for is what we're doing now at the cemetery, where we have just really limited hours. It's 4 hours a day, but it's consistent and available for the public so they know. And so that's sort of the model and the budget that we used of what we're using at the cemetery. It's already working really well there, and we think it'll work really well here. So it's a really limited operation. Obviously, they're 1,039 hours through the year. They're not benefited, but it provides another maybe part-time job for someone that is looking for some extra money, maybe a college student. You know, I think there's a lot of people that could fit what we're looking for to help us provide a better service.
Well, or a mother that's kids are in school, so they work 10 to 2 or 9 to 1 so that people can come on their lunch hours and get their work done there and not, you know, and then still go home and get their own kids after school or something. So I'm in favor of just having Leanne or whatever, or Donna, if she can't do it, coming to the board meeting and advocating to get if that's agreeable with everyone else.
I'm in favor of that as well. And I guess one thing I wanted to point out, and Commissioner Curtis, your points, I think what you stated in your letter, I agree. I don't disagree with. But I did want to point out that I think the Parks does do a good job maintaining and keeping track of like what is maintenance. They're obviously building a huge database, which is only going to help that. And when there have been things that have been to the point of safety concerns, they have taken action. And so I guess want to take it to the point of saying things are so dilapidated that we can't even function. And so I just wanted to help clarify that. But secondly, I think that this also helps our image. And I agree, when you walk into a building, I've come to this building many times, and I've always thought it's a little bit strange how it's like, who's the person to talk to? And well, that person doesn't exist, so.
It's the door.
Yeah, exactly. And I can see also when I look at the value at $15,000, that's obviously not going to put somebody in here for the entire day all the time. So you're not going to have that person all the time. But I think if we can kind of finesse it around the schedule, which I've seen the publications you guys have put together, and they're really well presented. And I think if they can have a person that can be allocated for those similar timeframes, that would help a lot. I do think that presence at the board. Now, I can't necessarily plan to be there, but I can see as we get closer to see if I could be available. So it's a little hard to say, sure, send someone there when I may not be the person available. But if Leanne or if Commissioner Curtis would be willing to do that, I think that presence, and then it also doesn't consume more time drafting letters and all that as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we
Okay,
need any
well-
motion on it. I think we
No,
just
there-
can
there's
have
no,
consensus on it.
It's possible action, but we don't really need to do that, I don't think. And, I'll do my best to, especially if I'm kind of given an estimate of when I need to be here. But,
We'll try to help you any way we can. If you need some talking points, we can help with that. Also, we'll look at the agenda. We'll try to estimate, but it's going to be a long one. It's going to be, I'm sure, a marathon meeting as it was last year. So we'll do our best to help you. I can try to call you, when I think things are moving or whatever, so you don't have to camp out for the whole day. But we just appreciate the support, so thank
Well,
you
there's
so
also the
much.
possibility that, the IFC, the Board of Supervisors, maybe a member might disagree with some of the things they've already said yes to. I don't know if that's ever happened, but, so maybe it's a good idea maybe it's a good idea
I
for.
anticipate that will happen this year, not necessarily in parks, but I think it might happen this year, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well,
But the
and
idea
there's
is that-
obviously a lot on that supplemental list that I think are really crucial to the department. And I would hate to prioritize that, but I'll tell you that full-time park maintenance worker position is our top priority. We really need more help. We need those boots on the ground doing that labor force. All of these other things, I mean, the seasonal increases, all of this will help our situation. So it's really hard. It's like picking, you're a parent and picking between your kids. They're all equally important, but they will all benefit from the public. So
Well, what I was just saying is that whoever comes should probably try to be here during the entire time that the parks budget is being presented, just in case, we need to advocate for anything else.
And I can contact the chair and see what her availability is, and if not, then I'll work with Commissioner Curtis, and we'll come up with a game plan for that.
All right, well, I think that completes the budget. I don't see anybody from the public who may want to comment on this, so.
We wore them down.
So let's go on to item C, and it's another possible action. Review, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding special event support and equipment provided by the Parks Department. And now we have David Navarro, and this was requested by Supervisor Bagwell, and it's continued from the October 3rd meeting where we had started a discussion on this.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Like Curtis, again, for the record, Dave Navarro, Parks Operations Superintendent. So since the last meeting that discussed the special event, like support and the equipment provided by the Parks Department, we've been busy gathering information on different, we'll see from different parks and organizations. We reached out to all the local ones in our area, Washoe County, the Sea Sparks, and then also some that are out of our area as well, just to see what they did and what they provided. And come to find out, there's a multitude of different things and different price ranges and different assets that they provide. And I think that one of the things that we also wanted to do during this process as well is look at what we currently had and what the state it was in, and get somebody in to give us an honest look at it to see how its current condition is, and if it was like the structure was like safe to use. And we're currently still trying to find somebody like to come in and look at that pieces of equipment like for us. It hasn't been like the easiest thing like to do lately. Our number one goal is not only to cover like our costs, but also to implement a capital like replacement plan. But until we get some of these answers, it's hard for us like to do that. And after looking at the asset management plan, and after seeing like the budget, it's having us like rethink on how we want to like attack this and how we want to go after it. It's just it's something that we are like one of our priorities is helping determine the direction of staff should be like Lizzie headed, and having our older equipment examined and possibly tested for safety, and also like sustainability as well, and again, just to what we want to do with our assets and what we want to continue to provide and how we want to provide that. Do we want to just have whatever on site, or do we want to continue to provide the stages like the bleachers, and what those fees would look like? And if we raised our fees, what kind of impact would that have not only on our perpetual like renters, but also our nonprofits as well? Will those like diminish if we raise our rates? Can we still provide the things that we can. I think that there's some things that we will continually have to provide, and what those are, it's hard to determine at this point. I think one of the things is going to be the power issue, and I don't think that's something that we can totally get away from. And so we have to look at that, and how are we going to protect our investment if we continue to do that. So again, we don't have concrete answers, and we don't have a concrete solution but all I can say is that we've heard from a lot of different people, and they are having the same problems as well, to determine what to provide and at what cost at this time.
I just want to jump in really quick. Parks and Recreation Director Jennifer Budge. I didn't want to get too far off and forget about this item, which is why we brought it back. And obviously, we're not really at a point to really get any hard direction. But I didn't want you to think that we haven't been making progress. And Dave has done a ton of work trying to really do a lot of research. But we're really looking at our existing equipment. Is it safe? Getting it inspected by professionals and making sure that what we are currently providing the public is safe and in the best interest of the public. Some of our stages were not originally stages, and they were fabricated, and our bleachers were purchased in like 1982, and we have a lot of aging equipment. And then you looked at that capital improvement plan, and we have millions of dollars of needs. So let's say we had to take our stages out of operation. Does that go back into our CIP, and is that more important than playgrounds that are falling apart or other infrastructure that's crumbling? I would probably argue no, but we'll need your recommendation after we get a safety inspection. And I don't want to say that it's unsafe or anything like that. I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but we have to do our job and make sure that what we are providing, knowing the age of the equipment, is in the best interest of the public and is safe. So we are trying to find someone to do that. It's very difficult. It's very specialized tasks to do that. And we will be bringing forward, we have our fee schedule is about 90% done. I'm working on a policy right now to guide the fee structure. So you have a policy to review as fees come up, so we can implement some things without having to run to the Board of Supervisors every single time something comes up or a new program. So we have a procedure. We get a lot of requests every week for fee waivers. I'm not comfortable providing those fee waivers. I think that's the Board of Supervisors' role. So if we can have a policy that guides what would constitute that and authorizes me to do that, or whatever procedure. So that's what we'll end up bringing forward. So that's the hardest part, really, to frame and find something that works with us and doesn't impact too negatively our nonprofits and other partners. So it's I think a bigger project than we even anticipated, but it's a good exercise to go through.
Just a question. Jennifer, just as we go forward, and maybe you've looked into some of this, but let's say we have a expert come in, they assess some equipment, and hypothetically a stage we use, he's like, you got to scrap this thing. Going forward, does it make sense for us to be, I guess what I want to know is, going forward, what pieces of equipment make sense to repurchase versus, is there like a lease option on certain things to where we don't find ourselves with 25-year-old equipment down the road?
And I know that's I'm not going to try to speak for Dave, but that's some of the research he's been doing. So there's a lot more efficient ways to do some things than what we've been doing. If you see when we haul the bleachers, it's pretty scary how we put it on the back of a vehicle and the whole process, and it takes a lot of people to load and unload that equipment. Well, now you can push a button and it takes one person and they pop open. So if that's something that we think could reduce the amount of labor needed to provide that service, right, and we look at the cost of that, and Dave, I think, has priced some of that stuff out already, we can definitely look at that into consideration. I mean, the bleachers are always helpful. We can use that everywhere, downtown, at our parks, you name it, there's an easy benefit. The stages, I would argue, there's a lot of other providers. So tents, things of that nature, I always say we're not Camelot Party Rentals, so we need to be focusing on making sure our parks are open, safe, and clean. does that service really fit into that basic service that we're trying to provide? So that's where I kind of look at what we're doing. But we do have small platforms we provide, say, for the fire department, for the badge pinning ceremony. I mean, where would they get that if we didn't have it? So I want to make sure we're also taking care of ourselves and city functions, city basic functions, and that we have that resource available. So maybe it's not the huge mobile stage, but maybe it's the smaller version that we can use for everything. So they're all considerations. It's a great question.
Commissioner Bagwell?
Well, and I think the other issue is, part of the problem is once you've provided a service to someone and you've done it for free, and now you have to say, I can't do it, it's a upheaval in the community, just like the ice rink was, or, it's like, and that's part of the issue, and we're just going to have to decide truly as a commission and as the Board of Supervisors is to admit, no, we don't have enough money to be all things to all groups. And so maybe part of the discussion is it's a city event, we provide it, or we rent it even ourselves from some party supply. Both, right? But that we really don't have an obligation to provide equipment to others that want to come and use our park or come and have a special event. And so I know that I struggle with it because, again, it's really hard when you have provided it and now the nonprofit's going to have to rent it from somewhere or get it on their own. And maybe part of our discussion needs to be events that have no charge, there's no fee, versus ones that have a ticket price. Because, granted, you may have to raise your ticket price $1 or $2 to cover the rental equipment. But if we have staff that's constantly being pulled off of their duties to maintain what they're supposed to do to go do a special event, what disservice are we doing there? And so I think it's going to be really tough for us because, again, it's hard to take something away once you've given it. But I think we're going to have to come to that realization. And maybe part of it is getting us some data on the common things that you provide, like you said, a stage, microphone system, whatever it is, and telling us if they are readily available within the 30-mile radius or whatever for people to rent. That might help make some decisions for us, too, to say, we're going to have to do X at the city level because there's nowhere for them to, they're going to have to ship it in from 500 miles, and they aren't going to store it, and they're not going to, and maybe that's something to help us. I don't know. Might be one option.
Yeah, and that's a good option. And we've actually been doing like the research on ourselves to see what is available. Like if we couldn't provide anything, what is out there? Are there people out there that are, that can do that? And we are finding people out there who can provide bleachers. They can provide stages, but they're pretty pricey, and that's so, and yes, you're right. We have been doing things, for like a long time, and it's tough. It's a tough decision to make to say, okay, we cannot do it. But when I'm out there and I'm looking at the pieces of equipment going up and watching the stages sway back and forth and wondering, if something is going to happen, then it's a concern on our end that if there's people out there and something were to happen, we would feel really bad, number one, but number two as well, that's the liability, yes, and so but yes, there are companies out there, and that we have reached out to those companies just to get an idea of what they provide and see also the cost, and we've already have brought those up to a couple of renters who have asked for larger stages and stages that we can't handle. We're like, well, here's a couple of people that we found that also provide this. You might try contacting them.
And so we've made an interim decision. I mean, we're temporarily not providing our stages until we can get them inspected because I am concerned about the liability. So we are not going to provide those again until I can get someone that's a professional to say that what we have is safe and adequate. So temporarily, we're not providing it, and it's not to be difficult. It's just we want to make sure the equipment, just due to the age, and we need to be smart. And there is a risk and a liability, and we would never want someone to hurt. I do struggle, and I think it is hard, as Supervisor Bagwell said. Once you've done something, to take it away is really hard. And it's hard for the staff to not want to provide that service and do anything and everything that they can do. But when I look at this $2 million list, I have a really hard time saying that a stage is more important than a playground that's falling apart. Things like that, when the pool is falling apart and we have 100,000 people that, it's just that stage doesn't provide that same level of service that other piece of equipment. So it's when you start to compare and you're really looking at your checkbook, what's the most important for the general public and the community as a whole? And to me, those are kind of creeping up more than the others. It's not that the stage isn't important, but it's just hard. So we are temporarily not providing that until we can get an expert to come in and look at it and give us some comfort. I have had a discussion with our risk manager, and she's definitely on board with that. But providing that, let's say we are safe and we can continue to provide that, then our discussion can still continue.
And meanwhile, you could still rent a stage if you need one. And secondly, have you talked to those parties about maybe like a long-term contract? Like, you're going to have so many events at least a year, and you'd be willing to agree to that many, and then plus add on so many maybe for some additional fee, but then kind of, I don't know, weigh that onto owning equipment, having to maintain it and pay people to set it up and all that as well.
And our reservation coordinator, she's great. She has a laundry list of places, so she tries to give a variety of options. Because it's not just locals that rent our stuff. It's people coming into town. It's traveling events, tournaments. It's a myriad of people that we're providing that service to. So we have a lot of options. So if they're coming in from Reno or Dayton or wherever, that she has kind of a laundry list. And we're not trying to favor any project. We want to make sure that they know that there's other resources available.
Are they willing then to go out and do that, or are they still trying to get something from us?
They'll always try to get it from us.
Well, we're cheaper. I mean, let's just, and with the nonprofit rates and the current fee schedule that was created like 20 years ago, we're giving away the farm. I mean, we're not covering our costs with these rentals. We're just not. And part of it is how we're set up. I mean, we didn't have that foresight and that progressive look at creating that asset management replacement program. So every dollar that we're collecting for power or stages or anything goes into the general fund. It's not being set aside to replace that equipment. So it's got to be part of how we move forward. Should we continue those services, we do need to set aside money to replace that equipment. Otherwise, we'll be back again, even if we bought a new stage or bought new bleachers. We'll be here in 15 years again anyway, trying to figure out how do we replace that. So we need to set ourselves up for success.
And Jennifer, I agree with you what you said. I mean, if we have to choose between maintaining a piece of equipment and maintaining a park structure, I'm with you. I think we have to really evaluate what it is we have for rentals, and maybe we're going to be somewhere in the middle between scrapping it all and keeping everything. But being able to devote our funds to our permanent facilities.
Well, and looking at the impact to our staff, so Dave made a great point, is if you look at, let's say I rent Mills Park. Well, maybe Mills Park comes with the 70 chairs and the 50 tables and whatever that's on site. So we don't have staff hauling it all over town to just get it there. I mean, just that labor cost. If I rent Mills Park, I'm going to leave it like I found it if I want to get my deposit back. So I have that. If I need something more, then I need to rent it from a third party, and I need to figure it out. Just like if you have a wedding, you get your cake from somewhere and your tables from somewhere and your linens from somewhere. People expect that. And so just providing the equipment and changing our practices about what's just on site, so we're not killing ourselves to provide 5 round tables to Fuji Park that's from Mills, and it took 2 hours to just get it there. Was that really worth that effort? and especially if it was a nonprofit rate and it was $75 for the whole weekend. I mean, it's just, we're kind of killing ourselves. And these are great community events, but at what cost?
Well, it says possible action would be to give direction to staff. I think, this discussion has covered that, and a lot of the things you've come up with sounds like it's going to be good policy to take a look at. So I don't see that we need to do anything further on this, except for hope for the best that we come up with a good solution.
Well, I think we can continue to do our research. We'll continue to update you as our progress. Obviously, we'll be talking about fees and things like that moving forward, and a policy that guides those fees. There's a lot of different conversations that kind of fold into this, so we'll just continue to update you, and we'll let you know what we find out about the stages and all of that just as we continue, if that sounds okay to you.
Okay, well, once again, there's no further comment. We'll go on.
Do you want to just call for
item.
public comment real quick? I know
And
there's
appreciate
nobody.
that very much. Appreciate the discussion and.
Chairperson Curtis.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to just call for public comment? Yeah, thank you.
And yell really loud.
Calling all public.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
they'll hear you.
right. Go. What if this horde comes in and says, wait a minute, we want bleachers? Anyway, okay, not hearing or seeing any public comment, then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Okay, this is staff updates, discussion only, and why don't I just go ahead and let you, if I don't have to read it out loud, I'll just go ahead and let you start with the staff updates. Is that all right?
Sure, and given the lateness of the hour, I'll keep it really brief. I tried to throw a lot of stuff in just in case there were questions on different things, but I'm going to send you a hard copy report on the Smoke-Free Action Committee so you can see what the other agencies are doing. I think that might be better so you can digest it, and then we can talk about that at a future meeting. But I did want to update you on a few vacant positions. We did hire a weed coordinator to replace Dan Anderson, we were very sad to miss, or to lose. He's been great. Marina Disbro, and I might be saying her name wrong, but she's been great. She just started 2 weeks ago. So she reports to Lindsay Boyer, our natural resource specialist. And then we're in the process of hopefully making an offer for our park maintenance worker position and our open space maintenance coordinator. Third time's a charm on that one. So we hope we're being able to fill those few vacant positions. And then just a plug for those people really excited to be watching this at home, but we are hiring seasonals, so lifeguards, recreation staff, park maintenance workers, anyone and everyone we're hiring. So this is a great place to work in the summer, and just go to carson.org and we'll help you find the right summer job for you. We did provide the organizational chart to all of you. I know there were a lot of changes, there were questions, so you wanted to know who was in what position. If you have any questions on that, let me know. And we'll update that as we fill those positions and send that out to you. And then I'm going to let Dave in a second give a flood project update, and then just let you know we will have an Arbor Day celebration on April 27th. I don't have an exact time. It'll probably be Mills Park again. We're trying to do a couple trees every year to fulfill our Arboretum plan. That's at Mills Park, and we'll work with the youth, and we're going to have our AmeriCorps staff, Danielle Hatch, leading that effort and doing an activity with kids, and it will be something fun. I don't have a time or exact information on that, but we'll send that out to you.
Okay, so updates on the 2017 flood projects. Currently, we just finished up repairing the trails that were known as the Canterbury Basin and Kings View area. We had some pretty significant damage there, but I just did the walkthrough with the contractor, and the trails. The trails look great. Also, at the base of Sea Hill, there was a section from let's see, the Mormon Church to the north to Ormsby, and that was recently repaired as well. And also earlier in the year, we did repair all of the trails at Riverview Park. I want to say a little over 3 miles of trails there were repaired, and then about a quarter of them got covered again with the last rains and snow. But I'm more than happy to let you know that withstood like the flooding, and they did actually very well, and it had minimal damage, and so those trails are still usable to this date. And then we are going to start the section from Moffitt's open space. That's going to go from just east of Empire Ranch Golf Course to the bridge that goes over Eagle Creek, and that'll start here in the next couple weeks. And then the section from Eagle Creek to Riverview Park Trails will also be started as well. So hopefully looking for the completion of those by the end of, let's see, April. And I'm trying to think if Ash Canyon was recently completed as well. We did have a little bit of damage from the past storms and rain, but it's something that's very minor and that we can fix as well. And we are also starting, Kings Canyon was started on Monday and looks to be done by the end of next week as well. So we are making a lot of progress. I'm very busy out there inspecting the trails, but the contractors that we have out there have been doing a tremendous job for the Parks Department. So.
And then I forgot one thing. So we do have, great news. We have 2 new facilities coming on, which we haven't been able to say in a long time. We're building a park. Schultz Ranch Park, the bid should be awarded, I think, any time now. The developer is putting that out to bid. So that's really exciting. So we have a good problem. We need to name the park and go through the process, and we have a park naming policy that we're going to follow. And we also have the disc golf course. So the disc golf course parking lot, we have a low bid, and all that paperwork's being finalized, and should be constructing the parking lot portion very soon. So any week now, which is great. And then the rest of the disc golf course with the tee boxes and all that is all through the Disc Golf Association, so through volunteer labor and not through a construction contract. So we're really excited about that, but we also need to name that facility as well. So we'll advertise it in the paper, and I'll send you guys all information about that process. So hopefully at our next meeting, we can officially name those 2 locations before their grand opening. So that's really exciting that we're going to have a new park, and we have a funding source to maintain the park, and we have a partner for the disc golf course. So better than we've done in the past, and being really progressive, so we aren't adding more to the staff without having some partnerships or funding along the way. Any questions on my report?
No, I'm just one comment. I've actually been out on most of the trails you just named, and great job. I know that stuff was atrocious, and to the point you couldn't even run on it. And everything's looking really good. I have to say, it makes me a little nervous when I saw the rain come a couple weeks ago. And I haven't been out to Riverview since then, but I've been on most of the other ones, and they're all still holding up really well. So.
Yeah, and there's another atmospheric river anticipated for this weekend, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll just have to add, when you go down to Riverview Park, it was just mainly the section that runs along the river, and basically what happened, it just washed off like the DG off the top of it, but the base was still there and pretty much intact. So to add to that and to fix that, it should be pretty easy to do. So, but they are very usable right now. So,
I think the rains are always a concern, but just on the lighter side of the news, I remember, was it 97 when we had all the flooding and before all those homes were built down there, and they had signs, for sale, Riverview parcel, and they were all under about 3 feet of water. And I wasn't involved in Parks and Rec back then to know what kind of damage that created. So.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, I'm glad you're going to be advertising in the paper because for Menkins Park, we had some other ideas for naming it, and this family showed up, and they said, we're the Menkins, and we settled Eagle Valley in 1842 or something. Nobody heard of them. Nobody knew anything about them, but they became a really great family. We really enjoyed all of them that came. So you never know. There may be something out there that, I'm just going to mention that. Okay, any public comment on the staff report update? Okay, so now we are members' announcements and requests for information. Do we have any? I do have one announcement. Unfortunately, I have to tell you, if you didn't know already, my husband passed away on March 8th. And I'm having a celebration of life, and I'm inviting anyone who knew me or knows me or my husband. It's going to be at the Elks Club on April 8th. That's a Sunday from 2 to 4. And so anybody who wants to come, you're invited. Any other announcements or requests for information? School board liaison?
Not much in the way of school board. We've been having equal amounts of fun, talking a lot about policies and procedures and risk management, so it's been a hoot there as well. But yeah, right. But I did just wanted to really quickly, for those who don't know, just extend a personal and a school district thank you to Rupert's Auto Body. If you haven't heard, they, with the help of others, put together a car for one of the high school students who was involved in that crash up in Kings Canyon, and they basically got her a vehicle that, in her partially disabled state, if you will, can now have the freedom to drive a vehicle and whatnot. So I just wanted to really thank Rupert's and everybody involved in that for, really truly changing somebody's life. So that's it.
The other update on the foundation, I'm no longer on it, but Lori, do you have anything to add to the what they're up to?
Well, we're going to be doing some projects with the city for some dog park improvements, so we hope to have all of those accomplished by June 30th. That was the commitment out there. I'm looking at them going, so, well, yeah, it's like, uh-oh. But anyway, that's exciting to say that. And then they're getting ready to put out a logo contest for people that might be interested in helping to design the foundation logo. So you should be seeing that come out anytime. And then quickly, it's any opportunity for people that want to do a memorial or something on the wall. They have that wall that they do in the volunteer of the year, volunteer of the years, etc. But then they also have, again, the memorial piece if somebody wants to just have a remembrance of someone they love or whatever. So that comes up here shortly too.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next, any public comment on those? All right. Future agenda items, we have the list that was attached, the last item on our packet, but I think the ones that are coming up, elect Parks Commission Chair, Vice Chair, I think we mean that for June, don't we? Not April, because we didn't do it. Draft fees, charges policy, we discussed, that's coming up. And then maybe talking about the cemetery. But I think all those would be for June, and then on we go for the rest. Anybody have anything they would like to add to that? Yes, Brett?
I'll just reiterate the couple we talked about before, but the RCT expected budget and in the earmark funds review, that things that are on the budget that are already earmarked so they don't necessarily show up as available funds. If we could do that in June, or if not June, maybe you could report in June when the next best effort for the RCT. Thank you.
Okay. I think that put public comments on that. All right. Possible action for adjournment? Is there any? Okay, so,
Put a fork in it. We're done.
all right.
It should be a push.
So I guess, do we have a motion on this? Or,
No.
oh, we don't have a motion anymore, okay.
You don't have
All right.
to. Just
All right, so
adjournment.
I think we're adjourned. Thank you very
there's-
much, everybody.
Technically, it's not a second, so someone makes a, okay. Gotcha.
Oh, there was a motion, okay. Oh, you
Oh,
said,
perfect,
okay.
didn't hear you. Thank you.
I just heard mumbling down there, I wasn't sure.